Um, how about Hugh Freeze at Auburn? This one's interesting. Auburn is a team that has those expectations, I think, very similar to LSU. They want to compete for a national championship. They feel like they can do that. I don't necessarily agree with them, and I might be not in tune with their fan base, Bruce, but it seems like they feel like they should compete like LSU and Georgia and Alabama. And again, the problem with that is that you've got to compete with LSU and Alabama and Georgia, amongst others now, like Tennessee, who's had a great year. So Hugh Freeze at Auburn. What do you think about this one?
He has a ton of baggage. Let's just start with that.
Yep.
He is a really good play caller. He's a very clever offensive mind. Look, Malik Willis was career felt like it had flatlined at Auburn. He went to Liberty, and he's turned him into an NFL quarterback. And he finds a way to utilize what guys are really, really good at. And I think he's very good at finding out what they can do, as opposed to some of the stuff that most coaches look at and go, he can't do this or whatever. So I think in that regard, he's really good. I think the part that's interesting, because as you said, with the LSU part, before Brian Harsin, the previous two coaches at Auburn, one won the national title, and the other one came within a play of winning the national title. And those two guys were Gus Malzahn and the one who actually won it, Gene Chizik. It's not like those guys are going to be, on the Rushmore of coaches, right? Gus Malzahn has some similarities, old high school coach, to his buddy Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze is just better with the passing game in that regard. But what is different, I think, and look, Chizik basically had, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve credit for this, but he basically had Superman on his team. He had the best player,
Yep.
arguably the best player who's ever played quarterback in college football, and Cam Newton in that system was dominant. But you got to remember now, like, all right, what's changed? Georgia is a way different animal now than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And that's not a knock on Mark Richt. Kirby Smart is recruiting incredibly well. There's a machine that is running. Now they won a national title, so there's no question marks about it. And Georgia is really close to Auburn proximity-wise. They're recruiting the same kids. That's going to be tough for Freeze to win those. The other thing, different than LSU certainly, is everybody who grows up in the state of Louisiana wants to be an LSU Tiger. In the state of Alabama, I'm not saying they all want to be Alabama, Crimson Tide, but a big chunk of them do. And so you're the other school in the great state of, football state of Alabama. And I think it's hard when you are now competing in a different way, right? Like, I think it hurt Tennessee for a while that Dabo got Clemson up and running, because they were taking a lot of kids that typically, back when Phil Fulmer and Johnny Majors were going, Clemson was kind of shaky. Clemson's not, and it wasn't anymore. And then I think again the Georgia thing hurts Auburn. I think Hugh Freeze is really good. I think he is a guy who knows what it takes to win in the SEC, and I think he will. I think he will have them as a top 15 team within 2 years. And if you ask me who's a better coach, him or Lane, I might say Hugh Freeze. I mean, to me, it's close. They're similar. Where they're really different is Lane Kiffin's really clever and has a feel for social media, and Hugh Freeze needs to stay as far away from it as possible. It's like
That's such a good point.
I think Lane kind of has figured some things out and has found his voice, whereas Hugh Freeze, I think, gets really caught up and can't get out of his own way. And remember back, 10 years ago when Lane was in Knoxville, or even when Lane was at USC for the second time, I feel like Lane couldn't get out of his own way. So I'm not sure Hugh Freeze will, no matter what he says, will totally change kind of that way. But on the field, they're going to support him in ways that they didn't support Brian Harsin. Because I think Hugh Freeze will speak to them in a way that I think that they're comfortable with, and he will get players, because guys know, to me right now, it's up for grabs who's the second best team in the SEC West. Jimbo has turned out to be a dud. You look at, Mike Leach, I don't know how much better he will get in Starkville. I think Lane has done a good job, but, I don't think, I don't think they're that close to Alabama. They can be competitive, but it feels like there's a bunch of like top, fringe top 20 teams, and then Alabama in the SEC West. Like, let's see if LSU can stay there. I mean, I know they had a good win over Alabama, but I don't think this was not a great Alabama team. We talked about A&M, so I think it's there for Hugh Freeze to hit the ground running, and I think the portal will help him. They're going to spend a ton of money, I think, to make to upgrade the roster. Now to go full circle, if you asked me, because I know that like the Auburn Deion dynamic didn't really get off the ground. I wonder if you're Georgia Tech or if you're an Auburn fan 2 years from now, you're going, why did they not give him what he wanted? If you had asked me 3 days ago, grade these hires, and you cannot give anybody the same grade, I would have said, okay, Luke Fickell, A, Matt Rule, A+. I mean, if just knowing what I know about Colorado and the situation, I'm like, I got to redo those grades, because I know, if I'm thinking about what they did, to me, Deion is the most A+ hire of the year.